Okay, let's move on, and we'll get to the bits that are relevant for the day. And fiddle my screen a second. Okay, this is relevant for the duration of the entire competition. Currently, the airspace file, which is relevant, is as listed there. Thank you. And if we need to make any significant changes, we will reissue an airspace file and let you know via the text link. It will be published on the Soaring Spot, of course. We'll confirm the changes at each competition briefing. And my little caveat at the bottom, if you want any information, either come up on the chat or speak to us in control. Moving on. Parachuting sites. These are declared active for the duration of the competition and will be scored as penalty zones. They're the usual ones. No surprises here. Weston on the Green, Hinton in the Hedges, Simpson, Langer, Chatteris. And I put the caveat in the bottom, other parachuting sites will be considered active unless we can confirm inactivity. And we'll talk about one of those in a minute. Let's move on. Aldermaston and Burfield. Those of you that have already loaded the airspace file will see changes to the prohibited areas around both Romeo 101 and Romeo 104, Aldermaston and Burfield. We have a dispensation which allows us to fly a bit closer to these than would normally. It doesn't lower the height, but it now limits the area, the footprint, if you like, to the actual physical establishments of the boundaries. Your airspace file should show you those. A couple of cautions on that as well. No landing to be made within the establishment boundary. You could end up glowing in the dark. No photography, of course, that's a security issue. And I don't think the bottom one's going to apply unless you've got your turbo stuck out. Right, moving on. All UK danger areas are penalty zones during their notified active hours. The exceptions are those that are annotated as applicable to helicopters only. That's a decision we made fairly early in our competition planning, and it accords in many ways with what the latest doctrine is from the regulators. Moving on. Compton Box, we may or may not use this. It is a bit more restrictive than it was a few years ago. Those of you who've got a long history in competitions remember we used to use it fairly regularly, and in the days of lower performance gliders it was much more important. It gives us a block, if we get it, and if we choose to use it, it gets the block of airspace from 4,500 to 5,500 feet QNH on the London QNH, the Heathrow QNH. The conditions are you must maintain VFR in this airspace, and that is not what you might consider VFR in Class G airspace. It is VFR in what in my youth used to call Rule 21 airspace. In other words, it's the controlled airspace, Class E and above. In this case, it'll be Class A, and you've got to be 1,000 foot vertically from cloud. So that really means we're not going to use this unless we can see a cloud base approaching 6,500 feet. When you're in the box, you must listen out on 129.890 at all times. And I do stress this point because we have had to do emergency clears of the box on a couple of occasions now when an aircraft in distress needs to fly through it. And I think our ability to get this block of airspace really depends on us playing by the rules, if you like. The other thing which you'll hear this year, if we do use it, is we'll be broadcasting at 30-minute intervals the Heathrow QNH, because that is what your altitudes should be based on while you're in the Compton Box. Every day we will declare the Compton Box either open or closed. And so that will be on the task sheet and will be spoken about at each daily briefing. Move on one. Thank you. Aerodrome traffic zones, airfield traffic zones, call them what you like, but they're the same thing. You may not fly in an ATZ without contacting the relevant ATS unit for that ATZ. They're all 2,000 feet above aerodrome level. I put the next line in. If you have to land in a force majeure situation at any airfield, please try and give them a call. And that applies to unlicensed airfields as well as licensed airfields, and otherwise airfields which don't have an ATZ. Frequencies may not be marked on the chart. Does anyone use charts now? I don't know. But we will provide relevant frequencies on the task sheet. And I will just put that note in there. A CA recently got heavy with someone for flying in an ATZ without permission and fined them £3,000. It's quite a fine to swallow, that. So ATZs at military airfields are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even though we know they go home at the weekends. So a reminder of the law on the ATZ, there is a link there to the relevant web page. It's a PDF actually, all on the BGA website. We know the regulators are twitchy and particularly exercised by aerodrome traffic zones at the moment. So if you get permission to fly in them, that's fine. It's not a penalty zone as far as we're concerned. If you talk to them, they say, yay, come on through. That's good. That's no problem. But don't do it without asking. Moving on. ODM is a permanent penalty zone. This is our local one immediately to the north, those of you not particularly familiar with the area. We have a history with them, and in the main it's pretty reasonable, but for competitions at the moment we need to make their ATZ a penalty zone, so it's no good calling them up and asking if you can land there. You will be penalised in that sense. Moving on. Neighbours, yeah, we have a good relationship with our local fields, Popham, Odium and Brimpton, and Odium in the main anyway. If you're forced to land at them or scratching away in their close vicinity, please give them a call on the appropriate frequency. They really do, particularly Popham. They like to know about it. Popham, those of you who don't know, it is a busy little GA airfield. It's got microlights, GA traffic, and gyros as well. They do like to know if you're in the area scratching around. Brimpton, very friendly to us, will allow us to tow out, as will Popham, but they do, again, comparatively busy. They like to know what's going on, so talk to them. Odium, at the weekend, that's the contact frequency, but it is a penalty zone, so I don't expect many calls to them, really. Moving on, I'll speak about Popham in a minute because there's a little bit more local information today. Frequencies today are as in on the slide there and in the local rules. And because there are a lot of competitions going on and there may be co-channel interference, please prefix all your calls with the word Lasham. That way we know that you're actually talking to us. And it also gives us the benefit you don't clip your call sign. You might clip the Lasham bit, but you won't clip your call sign. We know, so we know who's talking. Thank you. Transponders. A lot of you are now starting to carry them, which is good. If you carry a transponder, you are free to use it to squawk conspicuity. I almost got that right. Code, or to select a listing squawk should you care to do so. What you may not do in competitions is use it to enter a transponder mandatory zone. That gives you those of you with transponders a competitive advantage, so it can't be done. Okay, update for today. If you do decide to try out some of our local thermals, if they're there, Old Sarum parachuting may be active, and we're scoring it as penalty zone if there was a contest today, if there was a task today. But heads up, they are active. Chiltern Park parachuting site, which is the north of us, is not active. and is unlikely to be active again. Clayton Box is closed. Popham Airfield is closed today. They have a large model aircraft competition there. Quite a significant number of model aircraft, big ones as well. I mean, we're talking up to about 12-foot wingspan, I think. They'll be flying all around doing strange things, and they'll be doing that up to 1,000-foot AGL. So Popham themselves have closed the airfield. They've issued a note to that effect that the airfield is closed. So if you can avoid landing there, it would keep them on side with us, which we need. So please try not to land there. Obviously, in a real emergency, well, what can you do? You can do anything, can't you? You do what's the safest option. So really, I think that's pretty well all I've got as airspace. I'm sorry, it's always a long-winded brief on the first day. I'll try and make it shorter tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Colin. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the airfield layout and finishing on the assumption that we may fly tomorrow. So hopefully you found your way to the campsite for those that are camping. We'll do the competition forum, which those of you looking in the chat will have seen. Going to run a competition forum today at 12 o'clock in the Brown Elephant, which is handily labelled there. It's the big brown building next to the clubhouse. This year, we're doing what we've done the last few years. So the competition will operate on the south side of the airfield largely. So we've got a water bowser down there, trailer parking on the disused runway, and then kind of rigging area and parking out either side of that on the grass and around the Perry track. So just be very careful if you're driving around the south side of the Perry tracks. There may be gliders around near there. If you're coming back to the clubhouse from there, the preferred route is to come round the east side of the airfield along the perimeter track, and then rather than crossing the line of cones, carry on to the north and go between the two hangars on the gravel track, along the gravel track behind all the trailers, and then along the front of the caravan site along the Perry track. The reason for doing that is technically that little grass triangle up just to the south of the hangars, the two blue squares at the top right hand corner of this slide, is part of the landing area and is sort of occasionally used for training flights and things like that. So try and avoid driving across that little slither of Perry track there. Okay, so flying wise, here's how we're going to do it. So you've got your parking area down to the south. Please tow out along the disused runways. Some of the grass, particularly in the southeastern corner of the airfield, can be quite rough. So it's probably going to be easier to tow out along the cross runways. We'll have the grid on the main runway each day. Please avoid going north of the northern edge of the runway, because club flying will be operating from 9 in the morning in that area. If you do choose to leave your glider on the north side of the airfield, which is likely to be mostly Lasham Club members that might be using their normal trailer spot, please make sure if we're going flying that you are south of the north edge of the runway by 9 in the morning, so that club flying operations can occur. We're not planning to winch at all this week. It'll all be aerotows from the north side. But just be aware there may be gliders landing and things if you do have to cross that area at any stage. If we launch and you need to relight, please land in the area next to the grid on the grass to the south of the runway. You'll see the areas marked up on the map here, and we'll then get Graham and the green team to get you launched again as soon as possible. We're pretty efficient at doing that. If you can land relatively short, that would be helpful, unless there's loads of you. If we're doing normal landings, this is how we're going to try and do it. So we'll try and bring you in where we can from the west, but because we're going to be using a finish ring, it's less important. Line up with a landing area, ideally parallel with the runway, either on it or to the south of it, but not to the north of it unless you can't possibly avoid it. And land long if you can, so that those behind you have space to land. Try not to stop kind of right in the middle of the runway, because it'll block it for everyone behind you, especially if there's a number coming back at once. If we can't bring you back in from the west, we'll talk about it each day, but because it's a finish ring, you should be able to maneuver in such a manner that you can land kind of parallel to the main runway in most occasions. And if it's going to be anything different to that, we'll brief it. Just be aware the grass, I don't know if you can see the arrow, but the grass in this area can be quite rough in places. So this is down to the kind of southeast corner of the airfield, particularly kind of just northeast of where the gliders are going to be parked out on the runway. Some of that can be quite rutted and bumpy at times, so I'd avoid landing in that if you can. It is sort of okay to land on if you really have to. Club operations, we've talked about, really try and avoid parking out on the north side grass. A lot of local Lasham members will be doing that, but please try and avoid it this week. We've got the whole of the south of the airfield to use, and there's designated parking areas. Really appreciate it if the club can have as much space to operate up there as possible, to allow some good safety margins, and also to avoid you having to delay towing out if there's club launching going on. Finishing, please call 10k out from the finish ring, and as you cross the finish ring on 131030, which is the normal club frequency. You should hear any tugs that are operating on that frequency as well, which will give you an indication if there's any launching going on. We've had quite a lot of questions about finishing. What we're going to say is we're going to be visually monitoring finishes. Please fly safely and operate your aircraft within its flight limitations, both before and after crossing the finish ring. I'm not going to say any more than that. Thank you. Okay, scoring. When we do fly, please submit your trace within an hour of landing on robo control. Hopefully most of you have done this before, but it's pretty straightforward. Just log into robo control and put your trace on there. And that'll help us score it efficiently and keep you within the rules. If you're much later than now, we'll be looking at penalties. Okay, I've got a couple of other parish notices. So we mentioned it already, competition forum in the Brown Elephant at 12 o'clock today. Given today's a scrub, we might as well use the opportunity to do that. And then the other thing is, for those that are interested, tours of the Gliding Heritage Centre, which is a pretty impressive facility on the south side with a couple of hangars full of vintage gliders, are available. Graham Garnett's really kindly agreed to offer tours of that, so please speak to Graham. If anyone doesn't know who he is, just come and ask control and we'll point him out to you. Are there any questions, Michael? Yes, you can email your traces into I think it's Lasham scoring or something like that. I can't remember exactly what the email is. It's yeah, it's on the task sheets and it's going to be in the chat as well in a second. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to assume that there are no further questions. So today is scrubbed. There is no first launch. And if I can get the slides to work. Next briefing will be at 10 o'clock tomorrow. We're hopeful there is a chance of a task. Currently looks like potentially going out to the west, but we shall see how it looks in the morning tomorrow. Thank you very much, everyone.